Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Talk Gaming, the return, the start of the new season, whatever you want to call it. I do want to let you know that the live version of the show is actually streamed over on Twitch now. So if you want to see the show live, you can do that. Just make sure to follow the links down below and give me a follow or a sub, whatever you got to do, so that you get notified of when the episodes are being streamed. As for listening on the go, all of it still works. iTunes, SoundCloud, and now Spotify. Yes, Spotify. All of that, again, linked and described down below. I love you all. Enjoy the episode. We're going to have a great time. Boys and girls, little ones of all ages, it's that time. It's the time for the return of Talk Gaming. Welcome. And the camera's frozen. This is off to a great start. Oh, golly. Look at that face. Here, we'll swap to this camera. This was a backup camera. Give me a second. We have the technology. There we go. How you doing? How you doing? Glad to have you. Welcome to the club. I'm getting a phone call as we speak because, you know, these things always start the way that they do. But we always have backups. I'm not joking. In this room, I have 3 cameras pointed at me at the moment, one of which is nice, and I was hoping would be working, but evidently it is not. So we are pulling an audible and going to one of the webcams that I've plugged in because we are versatile. We are strong. We are women. So it's been a while. Welcome everybody, one and all. If you're watching this on YouTube after the show, we are streaming on Twitch now. Long story, kind of funny, kind of sad, all at the same time, but we're growing together as a family and being very depressed while we do it. Basically what happened is, for the recent PT video that I did over on YouTube, link right there, if you're watching on Twitch, basically in the video I talked briefly about a movie, a film called A Quiet Place, and in that video I use footage from the trailers of the movie. So it's not like spoilery footage, is nothing like that. In the video, it's very minimal. I talk about it for like 45 seconds. It was copyright struck by Paramount, I think is the studio that copyright struck it or whatever. I had to deal with that strike for quite a while. Finally, I got it fixed and dodged all of the crap that they were going to do. Like they were going to publish it, but it was going to be banned in like Eastern Europe and Russia and China and Germany, I think as well. And then they also said that they were going to go and like also take all of the ad revenue from it, and then they also had the option to copyright, give me like a strike, a community strike or whatever. It was just stupid. So I fought it, and finally I got it taken care of. But it turns out they also took away live streaming on YouTube, which, you know, I'm not losing sleep over it. I'm not crying. Twitch is a better live platform anyways, I think. So we're going to be live streaming here, and then we'll upload it to YouTube afterwards if you want to watch it there. But I always know if you want to watch it live, you can do so over on Twitch. Links to everything will be down in the section, description, and everything down below. But for everybody joining us live on Twitch, welcome. We're going to be doing a lot of... we're going to be doing a lot of streaming over on Twitch now. A lot of the work that I've been doing over the last month has been on Twitch and getting things ready for this, investing in a lot of new equipment, updating things, obviously a couple of hiccups here and there with cameras and such, but we have been working towards this for a while. And the basic idea is that while I'm playing games to critique anyways, we might as well stream them and hang out with you guys while we do it. So it's going to be fun, and it diversifies income, and more than anything, it's just a more intimate chance to hang out with you guys. And so it's going to be fun. So make sure that you follow, make sure that you join us, because it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to be doing some giveaways, that sort of thing, just to say thank you. Other housekeeping stuff before we jump into it. Of course, this is our first episode back, so there's a lot of this. Normally in the show, we don't have as much upkeep stuff to do. But been gone since like whenever, probably, did we drop frames. We drop frames. I just saw that. Don't worry. We're back. But no, we have been gone for a little while, and I think that it's been a good break more than anything, just to refocus, recenter, figure out what we're doing, where we're going wrong, and what we need to do. And I think that we'll be able to make some cool stuff happen. So I know that's incredibly vague. More than anything, I just don't want to spoil anything. I'm keeping an eye on the drop frames. Don't worry. Looks like we dropped 347. I've done multiple tests over the last week to make sure that that doesn't happen. I don't know why it's happening, so I guess we'll just have to investigate and try to prevent it. More than anything, I think what I can do in the short term is drop our bit rate down to try to adjust for that. But we have some topics to discuss, and we're going to do that. The first one that I want to talk about, we do some sort of light news, and we catch up on things that have been going on. And of course, if you guys have things that you want to discuss, you can throw them into the chat. One of the benefits of watching live is that you can join in live and comment, and then we can interact in that way. So we'll do that. But first, I want to talk about probably the most, to me, it's the most interesting flop that we've had recently. And I'll have to adjust the camera for a second. It's still on that frozen frame. I'm not totally sure what happened. But with this, as you can see, we're going to discuss Valve's newest game, Artifact. And a lot of people are kind of upset about this because Valve has been out of the development game for a while. They haven't done a whole lot. There we go. That's good enough. They've been out of the development game for a while, and of course, they've made many, many classics over the years, but steadily they've gotten further and further away from the development game for pursuing the sort of broad marketplace hosting business, which you can't really fault them for. I mean, Steam prints them money, so can't blame them. I mean, if it ain't broke, it don't fix it. So, I mean, Portal and like Half-Life, all of those games that they're known for and that are classics, quote unquote, whatever that means. All of those games are great, of course that helped establish them, but they certainly weren't games that were making them the kind of money that Steam makes them on a weekly basis. Steam prints money for them. So when we're looking at their foray back into game development with something like Artifact, which is, we'll discuss a little bit more about what it was and is in a moment, you can't really fault them for taking a half-ass approach because it's just not their priority. Well, that I shouldn't word it that way. You can fault them because it was done crappily. Oh, thank you, El Meme King. That's cool. Again, another thing we tested was to get the penguin dancing. So basically what it is, it's just a card game that you can play. It's sort of whenever you say a digital card game, people are going to think of like Magic the Gathering Arena, and then they also are going to think of games like Hearthstone and all of those. Thank you for the subscription. I didn't know I didn't know we could get those yet. I don't know. Well, that's cool. That's awesome. Thank you. Again, we aren't like officially affiliate yet because I just don't stream, but I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I don't know. I don't know anything about Twitch. Anyway, so it's really interesting, but it splits it into like 3 tracks. It's a really interesting game. I would suggest that you try it out and experiment with it. But more than anything, it's just that the player base isn't there. So, for instance, the big headline that grabbed a lot of people's attention was the game launched back in November 28th, the end of November. On Steam, of course, and it launched to a pretty decent audience, but its audience has dropped down to around 1,500 players. Somebody was telling me it dropped even lower than that, but basically it's dropped almost 98% over the course of just a couple months, which is, needless to say, pretty egregious and terrible. Especially when you compare it to other games like Hearthstone, who just passed a major milestone for having over 100 million players over the course of its lifetime. Like, that's insane. 100 million players compared to a current peak of 1,500 in recent days. So it's unfortunate because with these games, it's very self-predictive, right? So if you want to play the game, you're going to download it on day one. And if it doesn't immediately draw you in, you're going to just stop playing it, especially when it's free to play initially. This game isn't even free to play initially, at least as far as I'm aware. I believe it's still they still charge for it. I mean, I guess we can check. This is a live show. We're doing it live. We'll do it live. Artifact is still $20. Yep, they're still charging $20 for it. Look at this. Look at this. And this is why, like, when you're charging $20 for a game, this is going to keep players out of it, especially when there's a ton of microtransactions involved with it. So $20, I like, think of it from a current player, like somebody like you. Are you going to pay $20 to jump into the game? Not really, especially when you know that the players aren't there to play against. It just doesn't work. You have to have players there in order to play against, otherwise it defeats the purpose of the whole game. So it just doesn't work, to be perfectly honest. Which is unfortunate, you know, because even if the game is cool, if it doesn't have the player base and it's one of those multiplayer based games, it's not an option. You have to have the player base, and if they don't, it will tank faster than you would believe. That's a good question, Nameless Slave Not. What is the current player base like on Gwent? Somebody look that up for me. That would be really cool to know, because Gwent obviously is a really fun game. I don't know what the player base currently is like, but I'd be very interested in hearing what that's like. Yeah, exactly. Those long wait times. It's a feature. It's not actually an issue. More than anything, I think most people are just upset with Steam's attempt to turn this into another money-making, like, troglodyte grubhub. So it's just basically, people were like, okay, Steam's printing money. You would think that they would kind of take one for the team and put out a game that's really good and just doesn't have a lot of microtransactions or a lot of issues with that. It's just going to be a fun game, and this is sort of like their gift back to the community. It isn't like that. Basically, there's a ton of really weird, suspicious leveling and balancing choices that they made with when you get and earn card packs and things like that. So it doesn't feel as though it's fair. You can just pay to win. And that's the issue with card games. Like, for instance, this is something I'll show off because I think it's kind of cool. My brother, I played Magic the Gathering way back when, like 2014, I think was the last time I played Magic the Gathering. And it was with a coworker of mine. He was a chef at Chick-fil-A. And he was really into the game, and he just wanted to find new friends. And I was like, yeah, sure, I got an afternoon free. So he taught me how to play, and we played a couple rounds. I didn't really get it, and especially when he explained how it's very expensive, I wasn't crazy into it. So I just never really got back into it. But my brother decided to get me a Magic the Gathering deck that he built himself for Christmas. He got me that for Christmas, which is pretty cool because it's a gift where it's custom made for you from scratch, and it's something that you can both participate in and play with, and it starts like a new hobby, something that we can do together. So it was a really cool and clever, and I thought really unique gift. And so I've been playing it recently, but it's one of those games, like, and that's what I have here. I got like a bunch of cards, but this is the thing, like, there are some cards which are just objectively better for certain decks, right? And that's why those cards are worth a certain amount of money. And this also happens with like Hearthstone and with Gwent and with Artifact and games like that. Some cards are just better than others, as you would expect. Not all cards are going to be created equal. And so you will end up with some cards that are worth like 2 cents, and then some cards that are worth, I'm not going to go through and dig one, but some cards that are worth like, $15, or some cases like $120. And sometimes that's for like unique art or something else, or it was like a misprint and that makes it rare, so collectors want it. But a lot of the time it's because it's a really good card that's rare, so it's worth a lot of money. And as a result, like, pay to win is inevitably going to be something that you have to combat, and it has to be actively fought against until you end up with a game like Artifact or a lot of these card games where it's actually it's a meme, but it's like, it's a feature. It's part of the game, is that you hope to get a good card in the pack, and if you can buy more packs, you have better odds of getting good cards. So you could potentially end up doing better than the people who are playing fair, quote unquote, just grinding their way through it. So it's a little weird. But it doesn't really surprise me that this sort of money grubbing last ditch effort didn't work out too well for him. And it's an incredibly saturated market, which is the other thing. You can't just jump into this. Fokachevsky in Twitch chat says, I jumped into Magic the Gathering Arena, and when I got what I wanted, I decided to spend $20 on microtransactions because I love Magic the Gathering on PC. Duels were awful. When done right, with Artifact, you can't even try it. Yeah, no, that's true, and I think that's one of the big things they're missing. If they go to free to play, I'll try it out. I'll give it a shot. I've watched gameplay videos. It seems interesting enough, but I'm not going to spend $20 on a game I don't even know if there will be players to match against. And it isn't going to work for me. It just isn't going to work. If they go free to play, I'll give it a shot. But if they were going to go free to play, I would think that they would have already done it, especially with this news coming out. Unless they're like, oh, we don't want to seem like we are tanking, so we won't do that. You should do that. Yeah, exactly. Not gambling. It's basically gambling. No, Your Honor, it's not gambling. It's just that we have this thing set up where you pay us a set amount of money, and then completely arbitrarily and randomly, you may or may not get something that you want. It may be awesome or may be bad. You are, in essence, gambling. I forgot to turn this one on. You are, in essence, gambling your money, but you are always going to get something. So it's not complete gambling, right? Because you get something. That's literally the legal argument. That is bright. That is legally the argument that they use. It's just that the game is like you always are getting a product out of it. So you're not gambling because you do get something. It's just not necessarily the something you want. There was even one legal document I saw or article where a lawyer was saying it's the same thing as ordering at a restaurant. Right? Because you pay a set amount of money and you don't know the quality of the product you're going to be getting. It could be great, could be bad, but you do inevitably get a product. You just necessarily might not be satisfied with the quality of it. I get why that argument exists. I think it's stupid. I'll just leave it there. Another thing I wanted to address and talk about is something that I've been fascinated with. In our house where I live, I've got roommates here, and we've talked about this a few times because we like to play games together. We like to do a lot of co-op and all of that. So we have been discussing this, and what I'm talking about is, of course, Anthem. Now, Anthem is interesting to me because, of course, it's BioWare, and it's the first game that they've come out with since Mass Effect Andromeda, which was terrible for so many reasons. I don't need to cover that again. But this is allegedly and supposedly going to be their magnum opus and their thing that we'll play it and we'll be like, I get why we needed to wait all this time. This is why we needed to spend time waiting, and this is why Andromeda suffered, because all of your most talented guys came and worked on this, and this is the product of their labor. And I hope that that's what it is. I hope it is phenomenal because I want another phenomenal game. But it's very bizarre because everything we've seen is like, okay, it could be a really fun co-op game. You know, in the same vein as like Monster Hunter World, where you do need to play co-op. I forget. I've seen a few articles where it goes back and forth on whether or not there is single player components, like whether or not you can get through the whole game single player. I think it's one of those things, once again, like Monster Hunter, where like you can basically get through it by yourself, but you're missing out on a huge portion of the game if you do. And it's more like, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, multiplayer is not inherently bad. It's just that it can be used for bad consequences. What I'm interested in is that they're saying that this is a multiplayer experience, like a cooperative experience, but it is still a storytelling experience first and foremost, which is something we haven't really seen a lot of really ever. I mean, of course, MMOs and things like that, you can say try to do that sort of thing, but it's not easy. It really isn't easy. And so I'm intrigued. You know, I hope that this is the game that figures out that formula, that figures out what all of this means, how you justify and how you balance multiplayer and cooperative gameplay with storytelling, and how you make that work really, really well and smoothly. I'm just not sure. I am intrigued. I'm not sure if I'm hyped about this game though, because a lot of stuff is riding on it. And more than anything, like, we've been burnt by this before. So I think we all need to just be patient, wait for all of these reviews and all of the early impressions videos to get out, and go from there. Because, I mean, everybody says it, but I think it's just important, because you never know with a company like EA and with companies like BioWare, you just can't be sure. Even with Andromeda though, the one thing I will specify, and I'll do videos on this to try to, I guess, figure out what they're doing. I don't know if I'm going to get an early copy of this game. It would be nice, but I doubt I will. My content tends to be longer form and take longer to do, so I don't see why they would send me a copy early. I hope they surprise me, but I don't know. But usually, like with Andromeda, a couple people were saying that the game was really glitchy. A couple people were saying the game is kind of weird and doesn't really meet expectations. Not many people came right out and said this game sucks. I mean, I think Mass Effect Andromeda's score for like a week after release, the critic score was like a B. It was like an 80 and like an 81. Because people were like, well, yeah, it sucks right now, but once it's polished and fixed, it'll probably be pretty good. That's not how you should review games, in my opinion, at least, especially when you have to pay for it up front with no promise of whether or not it will be fixed to begin with. Let's see. Fokuchevsky in Twitch chat says, Anthem looks like its combat and UI was pulled directly from Andromeda or vice versa. You definitely do see a lot of similarities. So, for instance, if you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify or SoundCloud, links in the description box below, of course, you might not see it. But if you've seen the gameplay of it, which we have up on screen right now, the combat effects and all of this is very, very similar to what Andromeda was doing. And a lot of the character animations, you can see where a lot of the skeleton work was done in Andromeda. And some people, I forget who said it, so I apologize for not properly citing this, but I heard somebody talking about Andromeda and Anthem, and they were saying that Andromeda basically seems as though it was a tech demo for what Anthem was going to be. So they were showing off like some multiplayer stuff, and they were showing off some core gameplay stuff, and it was interesting and it seemed to work okay, but it was still a proof of concept. It wasn't polished, it wasn't what we expected, and it wasn't what was advertised, and it was very, very rough. And that kind of makes sense to me. Like when you're looking at this, you can see a lot of elements of Andromeda, a lot of the stuff they were doing with the Frostbite engine and all of these things. But now you actually get to see the benefits. A lot of the armor sort of looks familiar with some of the stuff they were doing. And mostly it's engine similarities because they're using the same engine. And hopefully what they've done over the last few years is they figured out how to get broader narratives to work in the Frostbite engine, because apparently that was the major issue, is that the engine just isn't built for long-form narrative games. It's built for like first-person shooters, which is why the combat systems worked really well in Andromeda when they weren't glitching out completely. They worked really well, and then the narrative stuff was terrible. So cutscenes and longer discussions were just not good. So, yeah, I haven't gone back and tried Andromeda since... I think I was going to try to do a 1 year later video. So I went back and I played it for another 45 minutes. And yeah, the ground didn't disappear beneath me, but it still just wasn't fun. And so I was like, I can't play through this game again to look at it a year later. I just can't do that to myself. So I abandoned that project pretty quickly. Let's see. Simple Yak says, I have over 1,000 hours in Destiny 1. Not proud of that. And I can say that this is literally just Destiny, but in third person. I will be completely honest. I have not played Destiny. Ooh, thank you for the sub, my friend. I don't know how you're doing that, because I didn't know I had subs available, but that's awesome. Thank you. With all of this, like, I mainly just don't know how these games compare because I haven't played them. Mainly, I've never been into the super grindy stuff. I've gotten really into Monster Hunter World. So that's like the first time I've ever been crazy into a game that relies heavily on the grind, quote unquote. But that's mainly just for, oh, don't worry, Simple Yak, I gotcha. There you go. Mainly it's just things like that where it's very rare for a game to click with me and for me to want to just lose myself in it. And I don't know if this game will do it. I'd like it to. Again, people will say, whether you're a YouTuber or whether you're just a random person, they'll be like, oh, you are trying to be a Debbie Downer. You're trying to mess with us or depress us. Like, no, we're just here. We all want games to be good. Like, I want games to be good. Don't you think we wish we could say how awesome this new game is instead of, can you believe how badly they butchered it? I would love like way more of that. Thank you, Tyler, for the follow. Thank you. But I don't know. It is just interesting. This game is going to be a real test because a lot is riding on this. I mean, if this game sucks, BioWare's gone. Fully expect for EA to disband BioWare, because at that point I think the brand is just toxic, which is a little, I mean, not a little, it's very sad to think that could happen, where BioWare goes from being the kings of the industry in narrative RPGs to being so toxic that people think that their games will inevitably just suck and be terrible. So hopefully it gets moderate recognition. At the very least, I hope it's just like another Destiny, and it has a really committed fan base and a long lifespan, and a lot of people really enjoy it. And then, we'll go from there. But more than anything, I just don't know how you blend like the Destiny framework with a BioWare RPG. And I don't think that they've said strictly that's what they're trying to do, but they are trying to meld those to some extent. So we'll see. Let's see. So, any comments? Yeah, I don't know. Another thing to discuss that we haven't talked about that happened while we were on hiatus and I was in Kauai was, of course, the separation of Activision from Bungie, that's the name of it. I was going to say Activision from Blizzard, and I was like, what? My brain. But no, they separated, and of course, those are the guys behind Destiny, and they took the Destiny franchise with them, as you guys are well aware, which is really, really interesting. Mainly just because, like, having come from a business background, it's not easy to separate out a partnership like that. And more than anything, you have to look at it and ask why the initial contract was set up the way that it was. So it wasn't strictly an acquisition, right? It wasn't that Activision bought out. Some people were confusing this and saying that like Activision bought out Bungie and then Bungie somehow bought themselves back. It wasn't strictly like that. It was more of a partnership, at least as far as like the contracting worked. And it looks like the partnership basically just ended. So same thing with what happened, for instance, with Disney and EA. They partner with them for like the Star Wars license. And then at any point, or presumably sometime down the road, that contract will expire and then they can pull rights or rearrange it and go elsewhere. And that's a whole nother thing with the cancellation of the Star Wars project, which I guess we can just lump into this discussion while we're at it. I will just say people were freaking out that the Star Wars project got canceled. I will say I wasn't really surprised at first that happened because EA obviously I think is just trying to get a game out that can be cross-platform, and more than anything, I at this point I'm not surprised by much of anything that EA does. And the other thing, like, you have to think about it from the management's perspective. So for them to cancel this project that's been in development for a year plus and has been floating around on the team for a while, it cost them a lot of money. Like, it cost them a lot of money to do that. So for them to cancel that, they're not just canceling all of that, reassigning the teams, reconfiguring everything. They lose time. Time is money, so they lose all that money. And then they also lose all of the money in value of the work that they did during that time. So all of that goes out the window. So either they take that, everything they did, and they set it aside and say, okay, this is a great framework. We're going to return to it after the new generations come out because this is too ambitious. That's possible. Or it's just straight canned. and they just said, you know what, this isn't going to work for us. It's got to go. And this is the big thing. It's important to remember a company like EA is making games for their for their shareholders. You know, it's whenever you go to a major corporation, they have to change the way that they develop. And that's why studios such as CD Projekt Red are such an exception, because they are publicly traded, but they're also making games for the players instead of for their shareholders specifically. This is why people will be like, how can DICE think it's a good idea, or EA think it's a good idea for Battlefield 5 to make the centerpiece of their like marketing campaign pissing off gamers? That's basically what the centerpiece of their marketing campaign was. And it took me a while to figure out, and then finally it just clicked. Like, quite clearly, their main goal is to satisfy like mainstream media, which does a lot of their promotion specifically to their shareholders, because again, most shareholders in those major companies, not everybody, again, there's exceptions. I own some stocks. I'm obviously not in this group, but a lot of shareholders tend to be older, and they tend to be people who are involved in legacy media, such as like, you know, the CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, Fox Business, those types of channels. They need to satisfy those groups, and those groups have certain expectations, specifically with regards to like diversity quotas and all of those types of things. So they need all of these things to play well, and that's because they make their money primarily from shareholders. Yeah, like sales are important, but that's not the end all be all. Like a major part of how a corporation exists and survives is by the money that they receive through IPOs and initial public offerings and stock trading and stock valuations. That's a huge part of how they survive. And the way that they do that and build that rapport is by obviously playing the game the way that they want to. So it doesn't really surprise me that all of this has gone down. And with Star Wars specifically, I think that they're playing the long game as well. Nobody knows really how long that contract is going to last. It's kind of unclear. But once again, that presumably is something that they would have to go through Disney, and they would have had to show Disney what they were working on. And presumably Disney also looked at it and said, yeah, no, that's not quite where we think we want to take it. So it could be something as simple as like they were going to make the game about a bounty hunter, right? And they're like, no, we want more heroes in it. We want it to tie into the movies better. Disney has a reputation for doing that sort of thing. That could have been part of it as well. Who knows? As for Destiny and the separation of Bungie from Activision, that's more just interesting because it is pretty rare. Presumably, Bungie had to pay a lot of fees, legal fees, to separate out completely and retain rights to the franchise, which Activision wasn't going to let go loosely or easily. And I think it's great. I don't really have any misgivings about it. They said that they learned some stuff from EA, but they're very excited to be separate from Activision rather. They're very excited to be their own independent and sovereign company. And I think it's going to be good for them because quite obviously most of the more predatory practices that were put in place were from the higher ups in Activision who were trying to satiate and satisfy the shareholders. And as gamers, we always look at the shareholders and we bash them and say that they're ruining the industry and ruining everything that we're doing. I don't want to jump on that bandwagon because I think that that's overly simplified, but more than anything, I think it's just that it's easy to find one scapegoat for most of our issues with a company, and the shareholders are the easiest ones. Companies like EA and Activision, they are frustrating, but they do a lot in the form of development and marketing for this industry. EA and Activision are responsible for a huge expansion of this industry into mainstream culture with games like Call of Duty and Madden and those types of games. And so there is, they are doing their job and they are helping with some of these things. I just wish that they also had other games that were also good, Small pet peeve of mine, I suppose. Simple Yak says in Twitch, BioWare is one of those developers that can somehow talk bad about gamers and get away with it. Just look on Twitter and see how many BioWare devs constantly call gamers horrible people. It's the only industry I can think of that can get away with dumping over its consumers. I don't, it depends on what you mean by industry, because I think a lot of, like, I've seen some articles from like car manufacturers saying that people need to buy their EVs and electric vehicles because they're much greener for the environment, and most people are very not green, I suppose is how you'd phrase it. I mean, politics as well. Most of politics is bashing. Like, look at Romney. Romney lost the presidency in part because of his 47% comment. Basically, he said that 47% of the country wasn't ever going to vote for him because they were on welfare or government assistance, and then they were therefore reliable to big government, and so they weren't going to vote for a guy that was going to make the government, quote unquote, smaller, which is, you know, whether or not Romney was ever going to do anything like that, I think it's definitely up for debate. But there is an element of truth to that, where like a lot of, or like basket of deplorables, you're actually like bashing your own customers. Thank you, Joseph, for the sub. Once again, I didn't know we could get subs, but this is awesome. Thank you so much. What am I drinking? It is a chestnut praline latte. I'm going to be honest with you guys. We're going to take a minute. Are you ready? Coming close. Luke's got something to tell you. No, more than I love the holidays, specifically for the coffee and for the drinks and the flavorings that they bring. And every year I get very, like, a little melancholy, a little first world problem heavy with January, specifically because all of those flavors go away. So, like, I freaking love whether it's like pumpkin spice lattes, I know I'm a white girl, or they enjoy like peppermint mochas. I like the caramel brulee stuff that they do. All of that stuff, I love it so much. This is about the closest that I can get, because I'm a white girl. You know, that's what I do. Simply Yak posted a game code. Is that what that is? Oops. That's funny. That's really, really funny. Yeah, Twitch chat. Yeah, I love it. But yeah, no, coffee. It's the lifeblood that drives the dreams of champions. If you can quote that in the chat right now, what movie that comes from. Coffee is the lifeblood that drives the dreams of champions. You are getting like the most major shout out you could possibly believe. Like, I'm going to see if anybody can get it. If you got it on YouTube, post it in the comment section now and see if you got it right. I'll pin the comment that gets it correct, because it is such a good movie. It's so good. I need to watch that again. Now I'm in the mood to watch that movie. Damn it. Okay. We'll move on, and I'll keep an eye and see if anybody gets it. And Googling it is cheating. Is cheating. Yeah, it's that one film between 1762 and 2341. Close, almost. This is something that I'm kind of, kicking and screaming. Simple Yak, the man of the hour. Kicking and Screaming. It's a Will Ferrell movie where a suburban dad becomes a soccer coach and has no idea what he's doing. It's very, very funny. And Mike Ditka's in it. It's awesome. I highly recommend it. This is an update I wanted to throw out there just because this is a game I played back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean like a couple years ago. That I enjoyed immensely, but I haven't heard anything more from the studio. I thought they shut down. But somebody sent me this, and it's kind of cool. So it is the trailer for... Come on.
This place, the life that was to be.
I'll show you this.
You cannot have it. You can never have it. It will never be yours. Time marches on. Time waits for no one. Actor, do not waste hours. Act.
Layers of Fear 2. I played the original Layers of Fear, and I really, really enjoyed it. Bloober Team, which can I just say is the greatest studio name ever created. Like, So good. But no, Layers of Fear. If this is real, I'm gonna lose it because I do freaking love the original Layers of Fear. It's I have a few issues with it, but it was really really good, and I had never played like a really awesome horror game, at least contemporary horror game, up until I played that game. It's real good. It's real good. I recommend it. Recommend it. Where was I? So I don't know. I don't think it gives any timeline. Let's see. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. It's copyright 2018, so it might have come out earlier, but I just saw it this week, so that's all it is. Yeah. So we'll see. They posted it 2 days ago, the video. So I don't know. Maybe they mentioned it earlier. I don't know. But I'm really excited for that. Yeah, I feel so bad. By the way, I did that video on PT, the remake, and literally within an hour of posting it and fixing all of the copyright strike crap, finally fixing it. I upload it, it processes, I publish it, check the website. Within like an hour of when I posted it, the developer took down the download so people couldn't download it. So I made this video that like the main point of the video was to get people to go play it and download it. And then within an hour of posting it, too late. Sorry. So unfortunately, like 20,000 people just missed out, which is really unfortunate. But what are you going to do? Like, I can't do anything. And I can't publicly say, hey, go get this torrent and like download it, even though the creator doesn't want you to. So I just have to like say, oh, I hope resourceful people can find where to get it. That's all I can say. And it makes me feel so sad. But I'm sure, I think I saw one download somebody had posted. Like, I'm sure you can find a copy somewhere. You just have to go look, you know. I pressed the wrong button. Da-da-da. This is the other thing I wanted to discuss, and mainly just because I'm slowly becoming intrigued by a little game called Death Stranding. This, again, like, I don't tend to get crazy hyped or excited for games. I've been crazy hyped and excited before, specifically for Fallout 4, and it bit me in the Katinkus. So I don't really do that anymore. This is just more intrigued than anything. I don't think I'm more fascinated. I'm not like crazy hyped. I'm just fascinated, mainly because Hideo Kojima is like, he's a very gifted developer. You know, people say genius all the time. I think genius, if we're going to go by like textbook definitions, very few people are geniuses. When we're just saying somebody's really good at what they do, that makes them a genius. Okay, he's a genius. But he is really talented with all this. And more than anything, if you've seen any of the gameplay trailers or anything, it's more just like, I don't know. Is it going to load or play an ad? I think it's going to play an ad. Yep, it's going to play an ad. But more than anything, it's just weird. It's just weird. And this is the big thing. Just because something is weird does not mean that it's deep, okay? And just because something is deep doesn't mean that it has to be weird. That's, like, there is an important distinction here. Quiet you. I want to show the gameplay of a baby. Their proprietary player does not work very well. It's like a little butt. So like Death Stranding is just so freaking weird. Like, people look at this and they say this is super interesting, super dark and weird and true. I think it's just weird. There's a lot of like writers, for instance. One of the things, I forget the exact wording on it, but one thing a writing teacher once told me, he said, if you can't baffle them with your wit, then utterly confuse them with your phrasing. Like, it basically was that. It wasn't like that word for word, but basically it was, the idea was that if you don't have anything super profound to say and to communicate, what you should do instead is just phrase it in such a way that it's utterly baffling and they'll assume that it was intelligent, which is kind of true. One of my issues with, should I say this? I'll say it anyways. I've been speaking with a few large YouTubers. A couple people in the chat will know exactly who I'm talking about when I say this. But I've been talking to a few large YouTubers who are very, very talented, and nobody can fault them for what they do and the content that they create. But they are very, very, I don't know. I refer to them as Adderall YouTubers, right? So there are YouTubers who just like spam content at you. You can tell they take a few Adderall pills and then they just type away and go crazy. They manage to talk for like 20 minutes without actually saying anything, but they have good watch time, so the videos get promoted. And, clearly it's working for them. You can't fault them for that. Clearly it's working, but it is not what I would consider incredibly high quality content. It's got a nice finish on it. It's polished, but a polished turd is still a turd. But yeah, some people are throwing out names, but yeah, Luke Stevens. But exactly, he figured it out. But more than anything, like, I think why I'm bringing all this up, I think a lot of YouTubers tend to do this as well. I think a lot of YouTubers tend to just write with big words. They pull up thesaurus.com and then they put in a couple words and then they just try to confuse you with their massive words. It's actually really interesting. If you take a couple of like the really long run-on sentences some of these YouTubers say, and mine included, some of my videos are not written very well. I will fully accept that, and I will not deny that. We all have faults. I just find it really, really funny and interesting because it is like a drinking game. Every time one of these YouTubers uses a word that they don't know the definition to, but they looked up on the thesaurus.com, what's a synonym for stinky? And then they use that in their video as if they're smart. Oh, don't pull that off. It's just bad. It's just bad. It's all bad. It's terrible. Yeah, I'm really into self-deprecation right now. Indubitably. More than anything, I think it's just gaming. YouTubers that focus on gaming are going through this weird sort of renaissance phase right now, at least I think, where gamers are more interested in like the highbrow content. So like the smart discussions and interesting like deep dives. That's why like my videos analyzing financial statements of major companies like CD Projekt Red, if you had told me like a year ago that video would do well, I wouldn't believe you. And I don't think most YouTubers would believe you. Or like my video where I pull out an Excel spreadsheet and say like, and chart out interesting moments as you're playing through Red Dead Redemption 2. That video shouldn't do well according to YouTube of like 2 years ago. You would think that PewDiePie screaming about a silly game would do well. But instead, they're doing really well. So I think that we are in this renaissance where people want interesting content and more challenging in terms of their brain and how they think about it. They want more challenging and interesting content. They just haven't received it. They're still receiving the same sort of half-assed crap that YouTubers have been putting out for years. And I think it just hasn't caught up to them. So we'll see. Yeah, exactly. They use words they don't know. 5 seconds later, indubitably. Oh, we had some more frames drop. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening with the frame drops. I've researched it. I can't figure it out. I don't know what the deal is. I'll do a stream analysis after this, see if it was network related or if it was like my recording related. It shouldn't be. But I don't know. Hey, Falkire, how you doing? Glad to have you here. But I'm intrigued. I don't know. But as for what we were initially talking about, way back at the beginning of this tirade, Death Stranding. It is really interesting. Basically, the news that came out was that the game is apparently it's wrapping up. Like they've got most of it there. A couple of the actors like Norman Reedus, or maybe it was Mads, whatever his last name is, are going in for their final shootings. And so they're finishing up at least the narrative part of it. And so we could potentially get it by the end of 2019, maybe early 2020. But basically it looks as though it is, I was going to try to summarize what this game's about. Nobody has any freaking idea. It's just weird. And that's something Hideo Kojima has a talent for, is just baffling you with the weirdness of what the game is. I think Norman Reedus actually said he had Hideo Kojima explain to him what the game was, and he didn't even understand. So he was like, what? I don't get it. Which, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think it depends on the user, on the person that's actually playing and absorbing it. Like, what even is that? It's a baby winking. Like, who knows? I don't know. Hopefully there's some major like explanation and everything will click and make sense, but more than likely we'll just leave the game more confused than when we started. But that's also kind of fun. That's kind of interesting. A lot of movies are like that and just leave you going, what? But those are the movies you end up talking about. For instance, I really like La La Land. I think it's a great movie. The rest of my family, like my mom, like if I play the song in the car, for instance, like we're going out to get coffee and I'm like, hey mom, I'll drive. And then I put on the car, like the theme from La La Land. She will start like tearing up and get a little like weepy just hearing the music because she remembers the ending of that movie. No spoilers. You should watch the movie though. And I just don't get it because I think it's a great movie, but that's the movie that you end up talking about. It's the one that has the sort of interesting ending that just kind of surprises you and kind of freaks you out, or it's just weird. It's just weird. I don't know. Weird, it can be good, but it also can be a scapegoat and a sort of get out of jail free card, which I don't think is necessarily good. But with this, look at this. So Guerrilla Games, the guys that did Horizon Zero Dawn, they gave Hideo Kojima their engine to develop Death Stranding on. This was like 3 years ago, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And basically what happened is Hideo Kojima was touring game development studios all over the world, trying to find the engine that he was going to use for Death Stranding, for his next big project, his magnum opus, right? And he went to all these studios, and then they would show him what their engine can do, and then they would say, yeah, so it's pretty good. It does these things, and we could probably work out a licensing deal. We would just take some straight royalties and that sort of thing. He's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's fair, whatever. He goes to Guerrilla Games Studios, and they give him a box, like a little wooden box, like this big. And in it, he opens it up. It's got the Guerrilla Games Studios logo on it. He opens up the box, and in it is just a thumb drive. And on that thumb drive was the entire raw source code for their Decima engine. And they said, use it. As far as anybody can tell, they didn't expect anything in return. They didn't expect any royalties to be paid or any licensing or anything. They just were so proud that they had reached a point where Hideo Kojima was coming to their studio to see what they could offer him, that they were like, this is our gift to you, right? Which is kind of beautiful. It's really sweet. Like, it's really, really sweet. And so now, after having developed the game on this engine, he goes all the way back to Guerrilla Games Studios, and this happened. So he gives them this box. Turns out it's the same exact box that they gave him, except now it's got this black imprint of his studio's logo on it. So it's Guerrilla Games, and then what's his studio? Kojima, not Konami. Very different. Kojima Productions, right there. And so it's like this dual thing. They're teaming up. They're partners. They love each other. No homo, but they love each other. And then inside the box is apparently the same thumb drive, but now with like the demo on it, which is really cool. So basically they went through, I'm not totally sure. I saw some comments that were saying it had the demo on it. I think they played the demo on the PS4, so I don't know how that would work, but yes, Tyler, it's using the engine that they developed for Horizon Zero Dawn. It's been worked on now, and so now it's called Decima. And the cool thing about Decima, the name they chose, Decima was chosen because it is taken partially from like decimal or not decimal. I can't remember it. It's an island in like East Asia, and it's basically where sort of like this big trading post was between Japan and a lot of European countries. And so it was a big trading hub, and as a result, they kind of blended the two together. And so they're naming this engine in this cool way Decima, so it sounds cool and gamery, but it's actually inspired by this island where they did a lot of back and forth between the Japanese and sort of the Eastern Europeans, which is where Guerrilla Game Studios is from. So they put so much thought into this, and it's very pretty when you dig into it and find out why they name these things like this. Thanks for the follow, Goat Slayer 94. Took me a sec. I haven't figured out how to see like sort of a list of maybe activities. Is that where I should go? Activity? No, that's not it. Streaming tools. And I'm so new to Twitch, guys. I suck. Channel stream summary, maybe go to, no, that's not it. Channel, nope. I'll figure it out. Basically, I'm just trying to find like where I can see people coming and watching and following or whatever they may be doing, but I don't know, who knows. Anyway, it's really pretty what they did, and apparently he showed them the first 2 hours of the game. And if you go to all of the Twitter feeds of all of the people who actually saw this demo, they're all floored, and they're all just floored. There's no other way to put it. And I encourage you to go just search Guerrilla Game Studios developer, and most of them have that in their bio, and they all pretty much posted selfies with Kojima, and they're all just glowing about it. Now, part of it, again, let's be rational. A lot of it is that this cool guy who's an industry like saint went and complimented their studio and has been using their stuff. So you can't really like fault them for complimenting it. It's not like somebody would be like, yeah, so Hideo Kojima came to my studio, showed me the first 2 hours of his project that's been like super hyped over the last couple years. It kind of sucked. I didn't really like it. Like, of course they're gonna praise it, but the degree of the praise and the detail with which they praise certain elements of it, you know, thought-provoking, things like that, it wasn't just, it was really good, can't wait for you guys to see it too. It was more specific. So I think it's oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. I think it's intriguing, and honestly I think we're probably looking at like late 2019. People were asking if I could do another financial analysis of other studios like Bethesda and break down those companies to see what they look like in terms of current finances and release schedules and all that. They aren't publicly traded. Not even ZeniMax. ZeniMax is privately owned, so you can't do it unless they are publicly traded. And unfortunately, the only companies that are really publicly traded are the companies we all hate. So like EA, Activision, and even those guys, they're huge, and so they own a lot of development studios underneath them. So looking at their finances could tell us like maybe they're getting ready to do some big marketing push, or they're developing some game we don't know about, or maybe they're just revamping Madden. Like, you just don't know. Which is just tough. So it is what it is, you know. We'll try the best with what we got though. But those are all the major topics we had on the docket. Anything else you guys want to be addressed? If you're in the chat, let me know. Before we part ways for the night. Like I said, while you guys are putting those in, like I said, I do plan to do a lot more streams, and I want to build up this audience on Twitch a lot more than I have. I feel like it's a big hole in my current portfolio. So, you know, we'll see how it kind of develops. But I do plan on playing a lot more games. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of kajiggering with how everything is set up and wired, and like the desk that you don't see right here. So like capture cards getting reconfigured so that I can stream off of the Switch or PS4 or whatever we may be doing that particular day, which is kind of cool. So we'll see. How goes life? Asks Falkire. Really good. No complaints. School started today, so Had my first, finance and marketing classes of the semester. It's good fun. I enjoy them. And to be honest, I tend to thrive when I have an unbelievable amount of things to do. So I am doing that. And that, the semester is just going to chug along. I also am going to be in Avenue Q, which if you have not seen or heard of that musical, I wonder if I can... Oh no, I can't. I looked into that before. I can't show it on stream because I'm going to re-upload this to YouTube. But seriously, right now, either pause the video or after the stream, go and look this up. Avenue Q. Really any of the songs. You could look up If You Were Gay. That's a really good song. You could look up Everyone's a Little Bit Racist. That's a really good one. It's basically when Muppets are really, really dirty. That's what this game is, but not like the Happy Time Murders or whatever that terrible movie was. It's like really sort of a goofy, lighthearted. It's just good. It's Sesame Street meets Muppets meets adult humor. It's really fun. But I'll be in that in the Lincoln Center here in Northern Colorado come April, and that'll be a real blast. So we'll chug along with that. As for other things, yeah, just life goes on. We're chugging. Let's see. Thanks for coming out, Tyler. You probably already headed out. He said he's headed to his last class of the day. Glad to have you. Fallout 76 being free to play. I don't think they'll. They haven't done that, right? I didn't miss some major news. I don't foresee them really ever doing that, to be perfectly honest. As for other things, it looks pretty standard. Yeah, they dropped the price down to $40, but I don't really see them doing a whole lot else. But yeah, do look up that song. It's damn funny. But thank you guys for coming out. We had a good time. I had a good time, and there will be lots more coming in the foreseeable future. So make sure to follow, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, do all of that stuff, and follow me on Twitter at LukeStevensTV to get notified when we go live. I'll send out a tweet every time. But thank you for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye bye. I love you.